When you think about the gear that really defines classic rock sounds, that huge crunch, the sustain, your mind probably jumps straight to the big names, the famous guitars, the giant amps, maybe the really iconic pedals. But sometimes the really big shifts in sound, the sort of architectural changes, they come from quieter places, the unsung heroes, those specialized little boxes that solve one specific problem right when it needs solving.
And that's exactly the kind of thing we're looking at today. We're doing a deep dive into a really fascinating, maybe slightly obscure bit of gear history, the Electro Harmonix Screaming Tree treble booster.
Right, 1971.
Yeah, released in 71. And, it looks pretty simple, especially next to its sibling, the Big Muff Pi. But its existence, it actually shows a huge strategic shift for EHX back then.
So our mission today isn't just about what the Screaming Tree did, sound-wise. It's also about what it sort of symbolized. How did it mark EHX's first real step beyond just making things louder, like beyond simple volume boosting? And maybe even more interesting, how was this New York company reacting so quickly, so directly to what was happening globally, specifically with British rock? We want to trace that sound evolution right back to 1971.
Okay, so for context, the Screaming Tree appears just a few years after EHX basically created the boost pedal market with the LPB1, the linear power booster. And at the same time, they were turning fuzz on its head with the Big Muff Pi. So EHX was already, making some serious noisemakers.
But this was different somehow.
It really was. The sources we've looked at are pretty clear. The Screaming Tree came about because musicians needed it, pure professional necessity. Mike Matthews, the founder of EHX, he knew guitarists were playing through bigger and bigger rigs, especially with those darker British amps, the ones Vox, Marshall.
Right, they have a certain thickness to them.
Exactly, and just getting louder wasn't always the answer. You needed something sharp, something precise to, cut through dense mixes, as the sources put it.
Okay, definition, not just volume.
That need for definition, yeah. And that takes us right to the origin story. This is where that global trend thing really clicks. What's so interesting is that the Screaming Tree was essentially EHX's American take on a British invention, the treble booster.
Okay, so it wasn't totally out of the blue. It had a predecessor, conceptually.
Oh, absolutely. It was a direct competitor, really a deliberate alternative to the Dallas Rangemaster, the really famous one. The Rangemaster had pretty much defined that bright, cutting British blues and rock sound all through the 60s. I mean, the players who used it. Legends.
Okay, so if the Rangemaster was already famous and used by titans, why make another one? Why would players go for the EHX version?
Good question. It really came down to format and logistics. The Rangemaster back then, it wasn't really a pedal as we think of it now. It was often this sort of clunky box you plug directly into the amp or maybe sat on top. Sometimes people even had them custom built into their amps. It just wasn't designed for the, stomp box world that was just starting to take off on stage.
Practicality.
Yeah.
EHX saw a way to make it more user-friendly for gigging musicians.
Exactly. Super strategic. They took that sound, that desirable British treble boost character, and bang, put it right into their own compact, sturdy pedal format. Perfect for the American market. It was accessible, relatively affordable, and definitely stage-ready. A New York version of a British specialist tool.
So culturally speaking, the Screaming Tree kind of democratized that sound, made it easier for working American guitarists to get that Clapton, Blackmore, Brian May kind of attack.
That's a great way to put it, yeah. It let them tap into that specific tone, shaping that sharp mid-focus sound without needing to hunt down or import expensive, maybe awkward British gear.
Okay, so it's the American answer. But did EHX just copy the Rangemaster's circuit, or did they put their own spin on it? Let's get into the technical side, the guts.
Right, the circuit. This is where you see the thinking, the engineering leap the sources point to. Basically, it's a single transistor treble boost. And if you just glanced at the schematic, the layout, it actually looks very similar component-wise to the basic LPB1 circuit.
Wait, so it's almost the same as their simple volume booster?
On paper, almost. But this is the absolute key point, especially for anyone using pedals today. The LPB1 was just more raw gain, a volume multiplier. The Screaming Tree, though, that was about where the boost happened, not just how much. It shifted the focus entirely.
Okay, explain that. Frequency shaping?
Precisely. It wasn't just more volume across the board. It was specifically voiced volume. The circuit was tuned, engineered to really hammer the upper mids and the highs. It basically ignored the low end. This was EHX's first dedicated EQ-based boost pedal. That's a huge philosophical step from just making things louder. They were now sculpting the tone with the boost.
So they realized that pushing a cranked amp didn't need more bass mud, it needed clarity up top.
Got it. More mushy low end just makes things worse in a band mix, right? You need that definition, that clarity to make the notes articulate, to cut through. In a way, this pedal kind of foreshadows almost every modern clean boost or transparent overdrive that aims to tighten the bass, not just inflate the whole signal.
Fascinating. And what about the physical pedal itself?
Physically, the sources mention it came in that early small EHX wedge case, made of steel.
Oh yeah, I know those. Like little metal door stops, built tough.
Exactly. Super durable, minimalist. Really reflects that it was meant as a utility tool, not some boutique showpiece.
And the controls? Simple, I assume?
Dead simple. One knob, boost, that controlled the amount of gain, and then just a foot switch for on-off. But here's a little detail that really roots it in the early 70s. The early versions were 9V battery only. No plug for an AC adapter.
Wow, battery only.
Yeah.
That really does scream early 70s utility, doesn't it? Portability over convenience. Just keep a stash of 9 volts handy. Yep. You had to be prepared. Now let's talk sound profile. Because that specific EQ tuning gave it this kind of dual personality, depending on how you set that one boost knob.
Okay, so low settings.
At lower boost settings, you got that classic treble booster effect. Clear, bright, really articulate, fantastic for emphasizing pick attack, string clarity. Made a darker sounding guitar, like maybe something with humbuckers, sound much more immediate.
And cranking the boost knob.
Ah, yeah. Run that boost knob high, especially if you hit an amp that was already cooking a bit, it turned into something else entirely. Really biting, sharp, almost spiky overdrive. Super aggressive, very focused. It just stripped away any softness in the signal chain.
I can see why that would be popular for tightening up humbuckers then. They can get a bit thick or undefined in the lows sometimes.
Exactly. The Screaming Tree was perfect for that. It effectively sculpted out that problematic low end while simultaneously pushing the frequencies that give you definition and cut. Instant focus for the guitarist.
Nice.
And here's a cool little side note from the history books.
Yeah.
It wasn't just for guitarists. Oh, really? Who else used it?
Early bass players apparently used it quite a bit too. Same reason, really. They wanted that extra cut, maybe some more harmonic complexity, especially for notes played higher up the neck. Helped ensure the bass line didn't just vanish into the mud being kicked up by the drums and guitars.
Interesting. So it sounds incredibly useful, versatile even.
Yeah.
But you don't really hear about the Screaming Tree the way you hear about the Big Muff, do you?
No, you really don't. Despite all its utility, it never got that kind of star status. It didn't have those huge artist endorsements, the ones that really cement a pedal in history as a legend. It was much more like a really reliable, essential screwdriver that every working pro needed in their toolbox. It wasn't the custom art piece, it was the functional tool.
So it circulated among working musicians, but didn't become a household name.
Precisely. That professional circulation was its real sphere of influence, but its actual production life, relatively short. The Screaming Tree was gone, out of production, by the late 1970s, and unlike almost every other major EHX hit, it was never officially reissued under that name.
Which makes original ones pretty rare now, I bet.
Quite rare, yeah. And they often get confused with the LPB1 floor boxes that look similar, which just kind of reinforces its story. It was a critical niche utility pedal, not a flagship sound like the Muff.
Okay, so this brings us to the big question, the so what? Why spend time digging into this relatively obscure pedal? What's the takeaway for understanding EHX's history?
Right. Why does it matter? The sources really highlight three key things, three reasons the Screaming Tree is historically important. This is the aha moment about where EHX was heading in the early 70s.
Lay them on us. Reason one.
Okay, reason one, it was the first dedicated EQ-based boost in their catalog. Think about that jump. From the simple volume boost of the LPB1 to the frequency-shaped gain of the Screaming Tree. That happened fast. It shows how quickly EHX's early design team was thinking, how responsive they were. They weren't just building circuits, they were consciously engineering specific tones.
Okay, that's a big step. What's number two?
Number two, it signaled EHX's rapid expansion into specialized pedals. They clearly realized musicians needed more than just fuzz and boost. The Screaming Tree popped up alongside things like ring modulators, signal switchers. EHX was quickly building out a whole sonic toolkit, an ecosystem for players who were experimenting or working professionally.
Building a broader catalog, making more tools available. Makes sense. And number three.
Number three, and maybe this is the most critical point about that global context we talked about. It proved EHX was very aware of international trends and what competitors were doing. They were actively creating basically New York versions of British-style effects.
Hmm.
They spotted a need in the U.S. market for a specific, successful sound from overseas, and they filled that gap quickly with an American-made alternative.
That really paints a picture of EHX being incredibly nimble and market-aware, even back then.
Absolutely. When you map it out, raw volume boost and almost immediately specialized EQ shaping with the screaming tree. It shows just how tuned in they were to what musicians were asking for, providing the right tool at the right moment.
It really underscores that sometimes the biggest leaps, the most revealing innovations, don't come from the smash hits everyone knows. They come from these specialized tools designed to solve a very real, very practical problem for the working musician.
Exactly. And that actually leads to a final thought, something for you, the listener, to mull over. Consider this. The screaming tree was successful in its niche, widely used by pros, yet EHX dropped it, never reissued it. Compare that to the Big Muff, which is basically eternal, right?
Yeah, totally different legacies.
So what does that tell us? The quick obsolescence, the non-reissue of this successful but specialized niche product. What does that suggest about the fundamental difference between creating a universal, timeless flagship sound versus just supplying a practical but maybe temporary utility tool in the whole history of effects manufacturing?
Flagship versus utility tool. That's definitely something to chew on next time you're looking at your own pedal board.